It was supposed to be a night of fun and laughter. My husband and I had been invited to a party, a casual gathering with close friends, the kind we often attended. The evening began like any other, with cheerful conversations, drinks being poured, and everyone catching up on the latest gossip. The house was beautifully lit, the music set the perfect mood, and excitement filled the air. But I had no idea that this night would take a turn I hadn't anticipated, stirring emotions I didn't even know I had. As the night progressed, the atmosphere began to shift. The laughter grew louder, the drinks kept coming, and I sensed an energy in the room that felt different. My husband and his friends had always shared a close bond, but tonight their behavior seemed unusual. Their teasing had a more flirtatious edge, their glances lingered, and the tension in the room became almost tangible. At first, I dismissed it, chalking it up to the effects of alcohol loosening everyone up. But I was about to discover that there was more to it. At one point, my husband and his friends gathered in a corner, whispering among themselves. I barely gave it a second thought, assuming it was an inside joke or perhaps a plan to surprise us with some kind of prank. When they returned, however, their demeanor had changed. My husband approached me with a smile, but there was something in his expression that unsettled me. "We're going to try something new tonight," he said, his voice calm yet firm. Before I could ask what he meant, the other men began approaching their wives and girlfriends with the same suggestion. It took a moment for the meaning to sink in, but when it did, my heart started to race. They were talking about partner swapping. The very idea was shocking, something I had never even considered. I glanced around the room and saw the women's reactions. Some wore expressions of shock and hesitation, while others appeared intrigued. My emotions were a whirlwind: confusion, fear, excitement, and an odd curiosity. My thoughts raced as I tried to process what this would mean for my marriage, for my relationship with my husband. Was this something he had wanted for a long time? Had he been hiding this side of himself from me? And most importantly, why was I even entertaining the idea? The room seemed to grow quieter as everyone processed the suggestion. Some women looked as unsettled as I felt, while others appeared more open to it. My husband didn't pressure me, he simply watched, waiting for my response. I had no idea what to say. Part of me wanted to run, to escape this madness, but another part, the part that had always craved something different, something thrilling, was tempted to see where this would lead. The first couple to agree took me by surprise. Without much discussion, they nodded to one another, stood up, and moved toward another couple. It happened so quickly, so effortlessly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Suddenly, the room felt stifling, the air thick, and I could barely breathe. I turned to my husband, searching for reassurance or an explanation, but all I saw in his eyes was anticipation. He leaned in close and whispered, "Only if you want to." It was my choice. I realized he wasn't pressuring me, but the very fact that he was open to this, that he had even suggested it, made me question everything. Did I want to do this? Could I handle what might come after? What would this mean for us tomorrow? One by one, couples began to swap partners. The room, which had felt so familiar earlier in the night, now seemed foreign and charged with an intensity I hadn't expected. My hands trembled as I watched, unsure of what to do. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the men, a friend of ours, approached me. He was always charming and kind, but tonight his gaze held something new, something I couldn't quite place. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice cutting through the chaos in my mind. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if it was true. He extended his hand, and I hesitated for only a moment before taking it. There was no going back now. As I stood, I felt my husband's eyes on me, but I couldn't bring myself to look at him. My heart pounded as I let myself be led away, the room spinning around me. We found a quieter spot, away from the others. For a brief moment, everything seemed to slow down. The sounds of laughter and the clinking of glasses continued in the background, but they felt distant, almost unreal. Standing before me, my husband's friend was calm and gentle. He didn't rush me or push me into anything. We began talking about nothing important, just small talk to ease the tension. But as the conversation dwindled, the air between us grew heavier, charged with something unspoken. He leaned in, his hand brushing lightly against mine, and for an instant I felt a spark. I knew it was wrong, but in that fleeting moment, I didn't care. I allowed myself to get swept up in the sensation, in the heat of the moment. His lips touched mine, softly at first, then with a growing urgency. A rush of emotions overwhelmed me: guilt, desire, and confusion. My mind screamed at me to stop, but my body responded in a way I hadn't anticipated. I thought about my husband, wondering what he was doing at that very moment. The thought sent an unexpected thrill through me. Was this what he wanted? A test? Or had he simply opened a door that neither of us could now close? The night unfolded in a whirlwind of emotions. I found myself caught up in a situation I never imagined, surrounded by people just as consumed by the moment as I was. It was exhilarating, bewildering, and terrifying all at once. As the evening drew to an end, I couldn't stop wondering what the morning would bring. The party ended, but the feelings lingered. On the silent drive home, I couldn't bring myself to look at my husband. He didn't speak either, his focus fixed on the road ahead. But the tension between us was undeniable. What had we done? What had we become? When we finally arrived home, the weight of the night began to settle in. We didn't talk about it. We didn't mention the party or what had happened. We simply went to bed, lying next to each other in the dark, the events of the evening pressing heavily on us. I wanted to ask him how he felt, whether he regretted it, but the words wouldn't come. So we lay there in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. The days that followed were strange. We avoided the topic entirely, both of us pretending as if nothing had happened. But the tension was ever present, just beneath the surface. Every time our eyes met, I could see the questions in his gaze, and I knew he saw the same in mine. A week later, we finally broke the silence. One evening after dinner, we sat down, and my husband asked the question I had been dreading. Do you regret it? His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. Did I regret it? Part of me did. The guilt had been eating away at me since that night. I knew things between us could never be the same, but another part of me, the part that had felt alive for the first time in years, couldn't entirely regret it. I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, and for a moment I thought he'd leave it at that. But then, to my surprise, he spoke again. I don't regret it, he said softly. My heart skipped a beat, and I stared at him, stunned by his words. How could he not regret it? How could he be okay with what had happened? He took a deep breath before continuing. It wasn't what I expected, but it made me realize something. We've been stuck in a routine for so long, just going through the motions. That night, as strange as it was, reminded me of how much I want to be with you, how much I love you. I don't need anything else, just you. Tears welled up in my eyes as I listened. I had been so afraid that what had happened would destroy us, but here he was, telling me it had brought him closer to me. I love you too, I whispered, and for the first time since that night, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. We knew we had to rebuild trust and work through the emotions stirred up by that night. But in the end, we came out stronger. The experience, as bizarre and unexpected as it had been, opened our eyes to what truly mattered. Looking back, I realized that night wasn't just about swapping partners. It was about confronting our fears, desires, and the state of our relationship. It forced us to communicate in ways we hadn't in years, to face the truths about ourselves and our marriage. While it's a night I'll never forget, it serves as a reminder that love is messy, complicated, and full of surprises. But as long as we have each other, we can get through anything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more. Thank you for being part of this journey with me.